In between the concrete walls and towers, the gravel road that led into the checkpoint's interior ran up against a metal fence. Could see zombies mulling around inside through the gaps. By the main road was a door to a waiting room, a processing center. I think the massive survivor camp across the way was a hastily thrown up extension to this. A little office with a glass booth guarded the door through into the courtyard I'd just been peeking at. I quickly dispatched everyone still waiting here, then broke into the office. Some guns and ammo to browse, and loads of paperwork. This place was running while civilization hadn't quite collapsed, and the infection zone was a giant quarantine more than a gladiatorial arena. Newspaper stories about cities getting nuked, massacres, religious upheaval, all marked as examples of what the staff weren't allowed to talk about with the clients, a form of bedside manner. It was all just archaeology now. That world of a year ago was irrelevant, but for the bullets stashed in its corpse. Seeing no other way, I returned to the truck to get a pick, then to the fence, where I hacked it to pieces. Hasan cheered me on and kept watch. An hour later I'd made a big enough gap to drive through, although first I had to go in on foot for a little battle. On my left was a heavy gate that led to the tunnel, sealed shut. That had trapped a large number of zombies in the courtyard, all lazing about on the ground. Don't think they were expecting visitors. Sent them all back to sleep, easy enough, then shook the gate. It was mechanically operated somewhere inside the thick concrete walls. I was able to climb over it through a superhero leap. On the other side were a series of brick buildings and parked military vehicles. Weapons and ammo were littering the ground. The battle's dead crawled out from under the trucks and emerged from windows, probably already crabby after the shooting next door disturbed their bacterial bliss. I dodged around the mess and dealt with them all but one. Beside the gate was a corpse in a chair that hadn't moved. I checked it out, shotgun first. It was a soldier whose gear had been mostly stripped. His right hand was on his lap, the thumb stretched up. I was attacked by laughter and eventually returned the gesture. He was in the middlingly undead state, warm and hardly decomposed. Perfect for fertilizer. Well, I let him carry on giving out the good vibes and returned to Hasan. I found her sat in the back of the truck, absorbed in a bundle of paper-clipped pages. "I think I get it," she said to me with the least confidence I'd yet heard from her. Beside her was the yellow tower of plastic explosives. We drove the truck into the courtyard. Then it was my turn to sit back while Hasan set up the charges on that gate. Had a bite to eat and enjoyed the cool air coming down from the mountain, jutting up right behind the complex, almost vertically. Eventually Hasan returned and took me behind the truck. She had something that looked like a walkie-talkie with weathered buttons. "Best not to look," she advised sorrowfully. We cowered and sent the signal. Wham! The truck jumped up on its side, then mercifully fell back instead of rolling onto us. The courtyard was filled with concrete dust. Hasan threw herself back into the truck and cursed her disposal of the oxygen tank. I drove us back outside for the time being. If our overseers were watching in any way, there could be no doubt what we were up to now. I was more worried about looking to the south, watching for the assassin. I had started to think he didn't work when the mist wasn't out, but that was a dumb thing to believe. Hasan confirmed that the gates and a decent chunk of the wall on either side had fallen. Another moment for my super strength to save the day. I pushed all the rubble aside and flipped the shredded gate pieces on top of it. That was the hard part over, yet more work awaited. The tunnel entrance itself was around a corner to the right, closed off with metal shutters. Tents and supplies littered the ground, all needing to be tidied away. The shutters had to be cut from their frame, since the electronics had been smashed by the team who let Hasan in, apparently. I expected to see them on the other side, but instead I came face to face with a big army truck. Hasan said it was the one that brought her over, parked right where she had disembarked with her children's motorbike. We puzzled over this before Hasan crawled underneath and tapped on a few things, returning with the conclusion that the fuel had been siphoned. There are abandoned vehicles everywhere, Easy for them to get to the desert if they can get fuel, she said. Where do you think they went? I asked. Nowhere to go, officially. Unofficially, this country's pretty big. Must be small places that are getting by in the nooks and crannies, especially with the food situation being so good. Is good the right word? I asked. Oh, don't you get all like that, she pouted. I thought that there might really be somewhere the both of us could go to. We were approaching the end of Hasan's plan, the part where she wanted my secrets spread to the world. A very open-ended plan. We had enough fuel ourselves to drive another day or two, which doesn't get you far when you can't even crack 30 on a good road. Even with such a minuscule idea of what we were actually doing, we brought the truck to the tunnel all the same. We waited in the entranceway to eat and prepare our gear. I released the brake on the military transport and slowly pushed it out of the way. The tunnel wasn't long, a few hundred yards, and had dim red lights marking the sides. Could see the patch of daylight at the end. Time to suit up, Hasan said. She was brandishing the orange hazmat suit. Will I need it? I asked. Hasan shrugged. Probably the correct answer. Shed the trench coat that had been my faithful companion since the earliest days, and pulled on the crackling plastic. Didn't fit. I'd grown a little over the months. We were getting perilously close to needing an actual plan, but there still was one more easy part to get through: drive down the tunnel. I would have been excited to see the outside world if Hasan hadn't tempered my expectations. Couldn't feel any of the weird zombie ray effects. Not yet. I expected the roof to be collapsed on us, or a door to close, a flood, fire, something. Must have been our lucky day. 1 minute later, we rattled out of the other end of the tunnel. It was different out there, after all Hasan's downplaying of the real world. No trees, and crud everywhere. Easiest way to describe this place was a complex of quarries and rubble, decorated with shipping container offices and armies of discarded construction equipment. The gravel road widened and ran off into the land of pits and molehills. As far as I could see up and down the wall, there were other roads on the rims of the quarry pits, with tracks leading up the sides of the mountain. Zombie tracks. There were a couple of concrete barracks right by the tunnel exit. Hasan got out briefly and looked for signs of the deserters, claiming she could talk to them. Decided not to tell her she was trying to get herself killed. While there was nothing there, she'd still get her way. We drove on for less than 30 seconds, then a rack of spikes was thrown out across the road. From among the shipping containers came a team of yellow-vested soldiers, 5 or 6 visible through the truck's hatch. They shouted for us to stop, and I slowed down to a crawl. Was just about to try our luck with the spikes, or try navigating the mess off-road, but Hasan called out that she was Eastcom. I could hear footsteps approaching on the gravel behind us. The soldiers were demanding that we stay still, no matter how still we were already staying. They knew I might be able to kill some of them, even with their numbers. Hasan crawled back and opened the door, which was probably the most likely way to get shot immediately, given how shocking the screeching hinges were. I saw she had her hands up, and more interestingly, I saw the soldiers back there were carrying stage lights. That's what they looked like. Round black tubes on long tripod legs, with wires running out the back. For a moment I believed I was being invited for my first big TV interview, maybe the part when everyone turned around and laughingly explained how this was all a prank for the biggest budget reality show of all time. Instead, a couple of soldiers shoved Hasan back into the truck and continued to scream and shout so much that it was unintelligible. They closed the door on us, then calmed down. I asked Hasan what they were doing and whether we should just drive. She said we needed to help them and started digging around in the gear. I heard the soldiers walking close and through the hatch saw guns pointed right at me. I bet getting shot in the face would be painful. Would have to ask that assassin next time. While repeated calls for us to stay in the vehicle and stay still rang out, I noticed more of those light pole things were being stuck up in front of us. I was peering around, trying to see if I could drive past the spikes anywhere. Seeing nothing, I said to Hasan I was about to reverse out, but she objected. She still claimed we could talk our way past them. I asked what they were actually doing, and Hasan didn't know. I was all for hitting the pedal, even though I knew this thing's reverse gear wasn't going to get us anywhere fast. Then there was the sound of a petrol generator outside. 2 seconds later, the truck was being pelted with that fake snow from the right. Some of it was coming through the gaps in the roof armor. I shouted out that it didn't work on me, and got no reply. The soldiers became a lot quieter, saying things privately now and again. Me and Hasan looked at each other. After a stare down with her, I turned the engine off. We waited another few minutes, during which time I realized precisely what was supposed to be happening. Of course, those lights were part of their anti-zombie death ray weapon, hence the snow. The clue was the gentle feeling of sickness and heat running across my skin. I didn't have the hazmat suit's shoddy headpiece on properly, so I secured it, then called out again that if these guys didn't want to talk, I was going to leave. Voice probably sounded stupid through the clear plastic face cover. "We have weapons, food, and tokens," Hasan shouted. "We can trade and carry on our way. There's no need to follow orders anymore. Eastcom is gone. What that colonel wants, it isn't for our sake or anyone's. It's too late anyway. Send someone to talk." No reply came to this, although I think it found its way to the right people. There was a decent amount of crunching gravel sounds and faintly audible murmurs. A few minutes later, the generator was turned off. That hot sensation faded, replaced by the cool sensation radiating from the snowbank they'd hosed up the side of the truck. The ultimate result? An order for us both to get out. Hasan was about to go first, but this time I told her to let me try, since it didn't matter so much if they started shooting right away. They didn't. The guns were ready, but their eyes weren't looking down the sights, more so right at me. I was a celebrity after all. "She's right, we're quitting," I said. "Y'all might as well do the same. First guys to leave will have it easiest. The last team already made it out." This final remark seemed to ease the mood. No doubt these guys had heard about Hasan's escort disappearing. Time to hope they were all as disloyal as Hasan claimed. She came out with 2 ice cream tubs full of 9mm rounds and placed them on the ground, open. "This world is about to be saved," she proclaimed in the absence of anyone else daring to speak. "But we all know that if the power is given only to our mutual superior, the colonel, the president, everything we did won't matter. There won't be an Eastcom, only the Cabal, the Crazy Jake crew. We have this one chance to let others see how the vectors work. This guy, the real deal. I know you were sent here to kill us. It's because they want to control all of this, same way they killed off anyone who knew what they were doing at Eastcom. It's just politics, and I don't know what world it's gonna make. All I know is it can be better. There can be a cure, a real cure. We can make the country again, with actual leaders. It's really all up to you. So, we will trade for passage. We have food, ammo, antibiotics, loads of the stuff given over to the Vector program. And that's it." The ring of soldiers around us tightened. About 20, I thought, and I was about 2 big leaps from the nearest shipping container, the nearest cover. But if I bolted, I'd be doing it alone. They still hadn't shot us yet. "That suit, it's protecting you," one of the soldiers said to me. I nodded. Someone laughed in a satisfied manner. Another asked me to drop my weapons, and I said no. Another asked Hasan what she was planning to do and where we were going. Hey, a good question. Hasan said we were going to Mexico to contact survivor organizations, plus anyone we could along the way. Not the direction I wanted to go, but any route out of a ring of guns is worth considering. Things calmed from here, if only because the longer we stood not shooting each other, the less such a shooting seemed necessary. Some of these soldiers were interested to hear Hasan's insider angle from the top of old Eastcom. Didn't really know what she was talking about. People, places, stuff that happened while everything was falling apart, and I was peacefully comatose. It was lunchtime, and that led to the food coming out of the truck for everyone to eat. They loved it, said that this old food was better than the new stuff, i.e. stuff grown from corpses. One of them told me very candidly that they had no idea a standard hazmat suit blocked the radiation emitter they were using. How nice to talk about how you tried to kill me 20 minutes ago. Hasan was right again about the morale of these guys. They were from the East Coast and were quite interested in going back there. A few liked the president, plus they got free food at the base, so they had to weigh their options. It ended in a civil exchange of goods. Hasan's magic powers had worked, and we ended up with not only fewer cumbersome bullets to haul around, but 2 mostly full oxygen tanks with masks. The previous owners had been unlucky, apparently, while patrolling the camp, having run into one of those me rejects in the woods. I said I'd killed all the ones I'd seen except for one. They said they knew the one I meant. They'd been shipping them out here and there, but kept that champ for these here parts, one of them told me. He part zombie, part you, part whipping dog. I mean, they all are. They lost themselves, you know. Must be weird for the ladies, waking up all jacked up. Wonder how complete the change is. Ultimately, we left them wondering such things. They withdrew their spikes and returned to their trucks parked around the corner. They drove off, having left us instructions to wait for half an hour before we did the same, although they said we'd be better off walking to the nearest town and stealing something better than our wheels. I thought about going back through the tunnel to the army transport we'd passed. As we waited, I concluded that I probably could have climbed out over the snowy mountaintops now. The effect was caused by a directed weapon. Was anyone still around to direct it? In the ruins of the massive construction site for the engineering wonder blocking our east, the difference between the amount of people and energy that must have been there then, to the outlaws and borderline deserters milling about here, was easily emphasized. There was a faint explosion somewhere to the north, or perhaps just the echo of one on the other side of the mountain. "Wanna go to Mexico then?" I asked Hasan. "It's a target, isn't it?" she said. I couldn't disagree, which was a shame. Only 20 minutes had passed, yet it felt dangerous to stay so near the scene of our crime. Plus, those soldiers might change their minds. That said, we'd be driving down the same strip of road they had, between the array of massive quarry pits. There were actually a few zombies lying around down there, or corpses of some description. I guess most new arrivals to the zone managed to scramble up the mountainside, and the rest stayed to haunt this broken land, this testament to the fall of humanity. "These tanks should give us some options," Hasan said. Indeed, now we didn't have to get out of the red mist zone before nightfall. Maybe essential, as neither of us could really predict how far from the zone the mist would drift. However, Hasan burst out the back of the trunk with a furious grimace. She beckoned to me to observe the masks. "Here, in the filter, the second layer has been perforated," she revealed. I thought they were much dumber than that, she added. She explained that the masks would work a lot less, while appearing and feeling completely normal to a greenhorn breather. "I was going to try it on the away team," she said, "but they turned out to be the best of them. Navgazane and company. I hope they're alright." "So we need to drive now," was the conclusion I skipped us to. Hasan stayed in the back of the truck, planning to fiddle with the masks. She could butcher one mask to fix the other, since I probably didn't need one. I bet she would have managed it. In the end, things went south, but not us. A short ways down the gravel peak road, I saw a huge mining dump truck coming up one of the earthen ramps from a quarry. Corpses in the back, and I already knew who was in the cab. It drove up and parked across the whole causeway. Hasan said to go back. A really good idea. Instead, I picked up my automatic shotgun and crawled out, ignoring the protests. I basically forced Hasan to grab her MP5 and come with me. The me assassin was walking towards us, while the cargo of undead clambered down the machine behind him. All I could do was mirror him, walking forwards, gun in hand, too far to shoot, and trying to think if shooting was even the right call. Hasan suggested we flee, wisely, and I noted that the gentleman we were about to meet might simply chase after us if we did, also wisely. I think both of me knew that the situation needed resolving sooner rather than later, and that our powers made that difficult. So things again descended into civil conversation, The end of the world feel made it seem quite natural. "What do you want?" I asked as an opening. "Kill you, kill her, I guess," the assassin said, pointing at us both. His assault rifle remained lowered. "Could just let us go. What's the difference?" I offered. "We'd both die," he said. "By the way, the name's Freddy." "Right, yeah, I'm Vern," I said with a smirk. "Yeah, I know all that," he said. "How many of you are there?" I asked. "Of me? Not many like me. If you're a vector, I'm a super vector. Most of the other patients became vectors." "If you ignore all the failures," Hasan added. Yeah, I was doing that," the assassin nodded. There was a silence. Still trying to work out if we should shoot each other. The assassin, being me, read the situation precisely. "You can't really kill me, even less than I can kill you," he said. He showed off the scars on his face from the other night. "A little plankton brings it back in a few hours, and they tested everything. Look." In a surreal moment, the me mutant began removing items of clothing. Good time for a little show and tell, right? He was showing me the scars all over his body, each from a time he was killed, mostly in the lab. "Why do you let them do this to you? We should stop this," Hasan protested, with many senses of her words coming to mind. "'Cause I'm already here. I didn't know what I was doing. I died. This guy has it the same. What this is, I don't know. Now they got me by the balls, and that's it. Work's easy enough, and saving the world's not such a bad thing, you know?" "You could kill them and save the world with us," I suggested. He laughed, then suddenly stopped. "You don't know, do you?" he ventured. An infuriating thing to hear. I looked on to Hasan, who had nothing for me. "You ain't never been outside of the mist for long," the assassin went on. "Don't you know what happens if you don't get your plankton? I get juiced up every night to keep me this pretty. A few days without a dose, and we'd degenerate. You know, we'd be one of them." He gestured over his shoulder with his thumb. The zombies were shuffling our way, not in much of a hurry. He could have been lying, yet it resounded true in the depths of my mind, or I felt like it was true. "So I can't leave," I said, turning to Hasan. "Is that—" "No," she said. Guess she didn't know how it worked either. "I didn't want to disappoint," the assassin shrugged. He started shifting closer to us, heightening the tension in my trigger finger. "I thought about bringing you in alive, since we're siblings and all, or something, right? Thing is, they want you dead for a while, for their science, and the only way they have to control me is to zombify me. I could smash in and get all the supplies in the stock, but I don't know squat about making that plankton brew. I gotta have their group making me my mush like I'm a damn baby, and if you're coming out here, it's the same for you. For now anyway, huh? That's why you gotta give up and die a little, so one of us can live a normal life, you know?" I'd read a few graphic novels in my time, and never did I think I'd be face to face with the clone of myself that wanted me dead for the same utterly reasonable cause that I wanted it dead. Worse, it could probably kill me a little more than I could kill it, or it could just let me go and I'd die even more anyway. Fantastic. "Then we're going back," Hasan said. "Vern, you can live in the infection zone. I'll surrender and try to work something out." "You want to go back to how this was at the start?" I said, angrier than I thought it would sound. "You're forgetting me. I don't want to live in the zone," the assassin argued. This was getting weirder and weirder. "And don't forget, they ain't gonna use that place much longer. They going mobile. They need to round up Zeds all over the country, using good vectors like you. First time the satellite beam switched, you'd be gasping for plankton same as any other reject. Then, if you don't get a bomb around your waist, you end up as plant food. Sometimes we livin' in, huh? Not that living is the ideal word to describe it." The assassin smirked at his own wit, and finally drew the assault rifle to his shoulder. "Only one of you will die, technically," he added.